No, I think we're all set.
Sorry, did you need to get through?
I'm gonna sneak through, because this does not look that well.
Okay. Otherwise, just have Lindsay do it otherwise.
Oh, because you have to go down there and play it.
Yeah, to press play.
I'll let you know. Just hit play. It'll run for about 15 to 20 seconds. That's when it stops.
And then hit stop it? Okay, just tell me when.
Set them, or- Ready to go? Good, all right. So we're here today, this is the case of the City of Plymouth versus Dakota Mo, citations AD 5227-14-4 and AD 522-581-3. We're here today, Attorney Caney is here, Attorney Bauer. Attorney Caney has filed a motion to suppress due to lack of reasonable suspicion for the traffic stop, so that's what we're here for today. Are we ready to proceed?
We are. Yes.
All right, you may proceed.
All right. Witness will be Officer Constance.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Nicholas Constance, Nicholas, Constance, Konstanz.
All right. Officer Constance, how are you currently employed?
With the City of Plymouth as a police officer.
And how long have you been a police officer with the City of Plymouth?
A little over 2 years.
And were you a police officer anywhere prior to City of Plymouth?
No,
And were you on duty on August 11th, 2023 at approximately 11:52 p.m.?
I was.
And what, if anything, caught your attention at this time?
So I was parked in the area of Highland and Eastern, and I observed a vehicle traveling eastbound on Eastern, and they caught my attention due to their speed.
Okay, and when you say they caught your attention due to their speed, did you have them on radar, or was this just a visual observation?
This was a visual observation.
Okay. And in your report, you note that you visually estimated the vehicle to be traveling 38 miles per hour, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have any specific training related to visually estimating vehicle speed?
I do.
And can you describe what that training is?
Sure. So in the Law Enforcement Academy, while I was being radar certified, we also did visual observations. So we would visually observe vehicles traveling, and we would have to, with a partner, we'd have to say the speed. And then later on in the academy, we would be tested on it. So I was tested to that, to my observation of speed.
Okay, and when you're tested at the academy, is it a pass-fail test?
It's not a pass-fail. It would be within a certain range. So I was able to test within 2 miles an hour of guessing the correct speed.
Okay. And so, again, this is training that you received at the police academy?
Yes.
And have you visually estimated vehicle speeds in the past?
I have.
And when you're looking at a vehicle and estimating the speed, are you able to describe what you're looking at or how you're visually estimating?
So I guess the way I would describe it is that your brain can see obviously how fast that vehicle is traveling in comparison to the objects around it. So I travel on Eastern Avenue every day. I travel Eastern Avenue driving in it, and I observe vehicles traveling on Eastern. And I have an idea of how fast they should be moving on that roadway versus how fast the vehicle that I observed was moving on that roadway.
And so, based on your training and experience, and based on your observations of the vehicle here, did you believe the vehicle was traveling in excess of the posted speed limit?
I did.
And what was the posted speed limit on this road?
25 miles per hour.
And again, what did you visually estimate the vehicle to be traveling at?
38 miles per hour.
So after this initial observation, what did you do next?
I pulled up behind the vehicle to observe their driving behavior further due to the time of night. One of the biggest things that I look for is impaired driving. So not that I believe them to be impaired based on the speed, but I pulled out behind the vehicle to observe them further.
And when you pulled out behind the vehicle, did you observe any brake lights?
I did.
Oh, go ahead.
It pretty close to after I pulled up behind the vehicle, the brake lights activated.
And when you pull out behind a vehicle and you see the brake lights activate, what does that tell you?
It leads me to believe that they have seen me pull up behind them, as in an officer in a marked squad car. So it leads me to believe that they're trying to slow down to avoid being pulled over by a cop.
And did you continue to follow the vehicle?
I did.
What did you observe while following the vehicle?
While following the vehicle, I observed them to deviate from their lane of travel. If I could review my report, I can tell you exactly where if you'd like.
Okay, if you were to review your report, would that refresh your recollection?
It would refresh my recollection as far as exactly where they did so. Off my recollection now, I know that they crossed the center line one time with both tires and then crossed the fog line at least once.
Okay. And was your vehicle equipped with dash cam?
It is.
And did you have that operating as you pulled up behind the vehicle?
I don't know if I turned it on or if the camera turns on. So the camera turns on automatically when the lights are activated, and it records 30 seconds prior to when the lights are activated. So I don't remember off the top of my head if I hit record as soon as I saw the vehicle or if it turned on based on my lights, which was shortly after I observed the vehicle.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to play the video. So if you want to hit play and then just let this run. Okay, you can stop it. So that vehicle that turned into the McDonald's parking lot, that's the vehicle that you observed traveling over the posted speed limit?
Yes.
And that's the vehicle you observed cross over the center line?
Yes.
Now, in that video, would you agree that it was difficult to see the vehicle cross the center line?
Yes, it can be difficult to see.
But you observed the vehicle cross the center line. I mean, you made that observation in person while you were behind the vehicle?
Yes, I did.
Now, is your suspicion heightened when you observe this type of driving behavior when it's late at night?
Yes.
And again, this traffic stop occurred at approximately 11:52 in the evening.
Yes.
And why is your suspicion heightened if it's late at night like this?
As a third shifter, this is generally what I'm seeing when it speeds and it's people traveling over the center line, and that's just generally what I deal with as a third shift officer. Is a lot of drunk drivers and just intoxicated people in general, not necessarily drunk drivers. But I don't remember exactly what day of the week this was, but if it was a Friday or Saturday, that would just make me suspect that even more.
And based on your observations of the driving behavior, did you initiate a traffic stop?
Yes.
And upon making contact with the vehicle, were you able to ID the driver of the vehicle?
I was.
And who was the operator?
The operator identified herself as Dakota Moe with a Louisiana driver's license.
And did you advise Ms. Moe for the reason for the traffic stop?
I did.
Did she make any comments related to her speed that you can recall?
Yes, she did. She said that she was, I don't know if she apologized, but she said that she was going downhill.
Okay, and so she didn't argue or make any statements to the contrary regarding her speed?
Correct.
And based on your training and experience, and your observations of Miss Mo's driving that evening, did you believe she was speeding?
I did.
And based on your training and experience, is speeding a violation of state statute and local ordinance?
Yes.
And was this violation the basis for the traffic stop?
Yes.
All right, I don't have any further questions.
Attorney Caney?
Thank you. Officer, so we just established one of the traffic violations you observed with this motor vehicle, with this truck, was speeding, correct?
Yes.
Officer, what other, if any, traffic violations did you observe?
The other violations I observed was crossing over the center line, and that would be the only violation I observed.
So just to be clear, in your observations of this vehicle, before you initiated the traffic stop, you observed, number one, a speeding violation, and then number two, at some point crossing over the center line, and that constitutes all the traffic violations you observed on the date in question, correct?
I believe so, yes.
When you observed the vehicle, you were stationary in your squad, you were parked at the intersection of Highland and Eastern Avenue?
I don't exactly remember where I was. I wasn't at the intersection based on watching the video again. I believe I was parked somewhere like Minard Orthodontics or somewhere on the south side of the road, right by Highland and Eastern there.
Okay, thank you. At some point then on Eastern Avenue, when you're heading eastbound out of town, it changes from 25 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour, is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Officer, do you know approximately where that change in speed limit occurs?
I do. It occurs east of the intersection of Highland and Eastern there. So,
So before you get to the McDonald's, if you're heading eastbound?
correct. Yep, correct. Past that intersection. If you're heading eastbound on Eastern, across Highland, right within a few car lengths is 35.
So your testimony is that you observed the vehicle going over 25 miles per hour based on your visual observations prior to entering that 35 mile per hour zone?
Correct.
Would that have been before, during, or after the truck passed where you were stationary in your squad car?
I observed the vehicle traveling that fast before it passed me, so before the intersection of Highland.
So you observed the vehicle visually speeding as it was coming towards you?
Correct.
What year did you obtain the training in the academy to visually observe and estimate speed of motor vehicles?
2021.
Did your department, Plymouth Police Department, give you any additional training, or have you had any additional training since 2021, your school training on visually estimating speed?
No formal training, no.
And I know you testified that your brain can see the speed based on stationary objects, something to that effect you testified to. How exactly does that work?
Well, to be honest, I'm not a scientist, but the brain can perceive, as far as I understand, how fast an object is moving, not to the exact, but can make a relatively close estimate of how fast that vehicle is moving based on the objects around it, how fast the vehicle itself is moving past those objects that are stationary, or if there were other vehicles at this time, there were not, but.
So, officer, I've had other people in law enforcement over the years testify, for example, on a country road, they will count seconds between telephone poles. And that can be a mathematical formula to determine the speed of a vehicle.
Sure.
Did you employ some sort of mathematical formula or counting mechanism to determine the speed of Ms. Mo's vehicle?
I did not.
In the course of your schooling and training, were you given any mathematical formulas or any time estimations, or is it just strictly visual?
Strictly visual is what I was trained on.
Is that method recognized by your police department, that visual observation method?
I don't know for sure. I believe it is.
Now, you testified that in the academy, you would perform, in essence, training exercises with other recruits in terms of determining vehicle speed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Since doing those training tests and schooling at the academy in 2021, have you had your estimation of vehicle speed tested by anyone else since schooling?
I have not had it retested, no.
How do you get to the precise number 38 miles per hour that Ms. Mo's vehicle is traveling?
It was what I observed the vehicle to be traveling, and I believed him to be traveling at that speed.
At the time of this stop, so this was August 11th of 23, was your squad equipped with a radar to calibrate and determine speeding?
Yes.
Did you make any efforts to use it during this observation of the vehicle?
The reason why I couldn't use it is because I was parked perpendicular to the roadway. Our radars face towards and to the rear of our squads, so I was parked perpendicular to the roadway. She was coming from my left. There would have been no other reasonable way for me to get the speed.
Understood. So it's not like, we kind of see sometimes the handheld devices?
I did not have a handheld, no. So the only radars I had were the squad equipped radars.
So your observation of the vehicle was shortly before passing you on Eastern Avenue. I know if you look westbound from where you would have been located, there's the Piggly Wiggly grocery store, correct?
Correct.
In relation to that grocery store or any other businesses or buildings, when do you recall first observing the vehicle driven by Ms. Mo?
I would say right around Piggly Wiggly, maybe at the beginning or to the east side. Somewhere in there is where I first observed the vehicle.
In terms of distance, prior to that vehicle passing your location, the vehicle driven by Ms. Mo, distance-wise, how long did you observe that vehicle before it approached your location?
Sure, so I don't know the exact distance between Piggly Wiggly and Highland. I would say probably for a good 60 to 70 yards, I observed the vehicle before pulling behind it.
So 60 to 70 yards, you observed the vehicle. And is it during those 60 or 70 yards that you made the determination that the vehicle was going over the posted speed limit?
Yes.
In terms of your training at the academy, when you were observing vehicles and the training exercises and visually determining speed and learning that process, approximately in distance, how long would you observe those vehicles in order to make an accurate determination?
There wasn't an exact distance that we observed them. We would observe them on different roadways near the academy. And we would have to guess that number, and we would turn on the radar, and then they would tell us where we were at, so.
Do you recall, officer, during the academy ever guessing the speed of a vehicle in that short of a distance, 60 to 70 yards?
Yes.
You testified that you observed the truck while you were pursuing it cross the fog line, which would be the right white line in the lane of travel, correct?
Correct.
And based on your observations of your in-squad video from that night, it is clear that both the fog line and the center lines are clearly painted and marked on the roadway for the entire distance that you were traveling on Eastern Avenue, except for the intersection, of course, correct?
Correct.
On the video, I understand the quality is not the greatest. I appreciate that, officer, but did you watch the video as it was played in court today, sir?
I did.
Did you see the vehicle cross the fog line?
Again, it was a little difficult to see from my angle and a little bit difficult to see the quality as far as that. But in the video, I can't say that I can say whether or not I could see it for sure.
Okay. Same question I'll ask you. I mean, I've watched this video several times. I have a difficult time seeing, but did you see at any point where I could pause that video and you can clearly see the truck has its tires touching or crossing the center line?
I did not observe that in the video just now. I could try if you want me to, but.
Sure, I'd like to give you an opportunity, a clear view, and I think what I'll do, officers, I'll turn the TV your way.
Sure.
We'll press play, and then I'd like you to say stop when one of two things occur. The vehicle crosses the fog line or the vehicle crosses the center line. If you see either one, please say pause, and we'll pause it and take a look. Is that fair? Okay.
Sure. prior before, just a little bit before she activated her brake lights, to me, in the video, it looked like she was over more to the left. I can't see for certain, her crossing right there.
But that's the point you believe. Again, it's difficult to say what's in your mind versus what's on the video, but
Right.
based on your recollection, you've had a chance to review that video and your police reports prior to today's hearing, is that
Yes.
fair?
Yes.
Okay. And again, we're going back to last August. I understand you've had a
Right.
ton of traffic stops since then, but a few seconds before we just pause this is when you believe possibly that's the point in time the vehicle crosses the center line?
Yes.
Okay. For purposes of today's hearing, those are my only questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. Let me redirect.
Just brief redirect. So again, in the police academy, you did have this visual speed training, correct?
Yes.
And did you testify before that during your training at the police academy, you were able to guess the speed within 2 miles per hour?
Yes.
And was that guess once, or was that a consistent guess?
So that's an average of all, over the testing period, we would do 10 observational tests. So of 10 guesses, my average was within 2 miles per hour.
Okay,
Or I should say, my average was 2 miles per hour.
okay. And so on this night in question, again, your estimate of Miss Mo's vehicle is 38 miles per hour.
Yes.
And again, this was in the 25 mile per hour speed zone.
Yes.
And we've certainly talked about the video enough, but based on your observations from inside your police car that evening, did you see Miss Mo's vehicle cross over the center line?
Yes.
And so based on the speed and based on crossing over the center line, those were the reasons why you initiated the traffic stop.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
I do not have follow-up on those issues.
Did you want any argument, any argument?
Sure, briefly. So we've heard the officer testify today extensively about his visual speed estimate training at the police academy. He testified that his average during this training was visually estimating vehicles within 2 miles per hour of the speed they were traveling. On August 11th, he was conducting routine traffic enforcement in the city of Plymouth. He observed a vehicle traveling in his direction for about 60 to 70 yards. During this observation, he visually estimated the vehicle to be traveling 38 miles per hour. If you take into account the 2 mile per hour give or take, we're at 36 to 40 miles per hour, both of which are over the posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. That is a traffic infraction. There is a state law and local ordinance that prohibit speeding. And so in my view, right at that point, based on that visual estimation, there's reasonable suspicion to initiate a traffic stop for speeding. As the officer pulled up behind the vehicle, he observed the vehicle cross over the center line. Operating left of center is another traffic violation. I know the video is a little bit grainy and it's difficult to see definitively, but again, he did testify that he did observe that personally on August 11th. And so based on the speed and based on the left of center violation, I believe the officer certainly had reasonable suspicion to initiate a traffic stop, and for those reasons, I'd ask that the motion be denied.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Kane?
Judge, thank you. My position remains that there was not reasonable suspicion to initiate the traffic stop of Ms. Mo's vehicle. The officer testified clearly there were 2 traffic violations that were observed by him that evening. Number 1 was the visual estimation of speed. Secondly, obviously, the crossing of the center line. Visual estimation of speed is not an accurate law enforcement tool. It's the reason why squads have radars. I appreciate the fact that the radar, and I'm glad we clarified this, the radar in the officer's unit was in essence straight ahead, an object or vehicle straight ahead of the car, and then an object or vehicle behind the vehicle. He did not, his vehicle was not equipped with one of those handheld units. So it makes sense to me now why there was not a radar calibrated speed. But that being said, there's no timing, there's no pacing, as the court is probably very familiar with. I went through with the officer a scenario where some officers will count seconds between a vehicle passing through telephone poles on a country road. That is a tool that can be put into a mathematical formula. Pacing really encompasses all of the tools law enforcement can have to determine speed. A visual observation doesn't fall under the umbrella of pacing. And quite frankly, I haven't heard of it, but that being said, if there's no scientific backing or otherwise, there's no formula, there's no timing, there's no pacing, it's just a visual observation. And I don't think it's a basis to initiate a traffic stop based on the facts that we have here. Secondarily, then we have the crossing the center line. Everyone agrees that the quality of the in-squad video certainly isn't the greatest, but I think it's clear enough, especially because this was taken at night, so we have some of the illumination, specifically the illumination of the rear lights of the truck driven by Ms. Mo. And when I focus on those and I try to determine if the vehicle crossed the center line, I have watched this over 20 times. I do not see that vehicle cross the center line. I believe the officer is doing his best here today and trying to use the video along with his recollection and police reports to determine when that vehicle in fact crossed the center line. And we somewhat narrowed it down to close in time before the truck turns into the McDonald's parking lot there. But quite frankly, the vehicle, in my estimation and observations, does not cross the center line. So with that, I don't believe there was reasonable suspicion to stop this vehicle based on the information the officer had at the time.
Okay, thank you. Just take a minute or two to collect my thoughts. Okay, so the case I'm going to be referring to, I think, which is directly on point to this, is State versus Popke, 2009, Wisconsin 37. And the issue here is whether the traffic stop violated the constitutional protections under the Fourth Amendment and Article 1, Section 11 of the U.S. or the Wisconsin Constitution. Whether there's probable cause or reasonable suspicion to stop a vehicle is a question of constitutional fact, which is under State v. Mitchell, 167 West 2nd, 672, State v. Williams, 2001, Wisconsin 21. The temporary detention of individuals during the stop of an automobile by police, even if only for a brief period, and for a limited purpose, constitutes a seizure of persons within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment, which is State v. Galrap, 2007 was second, 600. An automobile stop, and again, this is Popke quoting these in that case. An automobile must not be unreasonable, an automobile stop and must not be unreasonable under the circumstances, which is Galrap. An officer may conduct a traffic stop when he or she has probable cause to believe a traffic violation has occurred. That's in Galrap. Also, Wren, 517 U.S. Probable cause refers to the quantum of evidence which would lead a reasonable police officer to believe that a traffic violation has occurred, which is Johnson v. State, 75 West 2nd, 344. The evidence need not establish proof beyond a reasonable doubt, or even that guilt is more probable than not, but rather probable cause requires that the information led a reasonable officer to believe that guilt is more than a possibility, which is the same case. In other words, probable cause exists when the officer has reasonable grounds to believe that the person is committing or has committed a crime. So in this case, we heard the testimony of Officer Constance. He's been an officer for approximately 2 years and was on duty August 11th, 2023 at 11:52 p.m. He was parked on the south side of Eastern Avenue. I think it was in the parking lot of the dentist office, I forget the name, kind of across from Chester's. And his visual observation of the defendant's vehicle traveling eastbound on Eastern Avenue. And as he observed the vehicle at approximately 60 to 70 feet away, he made a visual observation that the vehicle was traveling 38 miles per hour in a 25 mile per hour zone. His testimony was that he's familiar with that area. He has observed vehicles traveling on Eastern Avenue, and he is very familiar with the speeds of vehicles traveling on on Eastern Avenue, and he had training at the academy where he had to be within 2 miles per hour over. So based on his observations and his training, he believed that the vehicle was speeding, a violation of state statute 346.57 sub 4 sub E, and that it was a violation of the Wisconsin Traffic Code and local ordinance. Additionally, his testimony was that he, after the defendant's vehicle passed, he pulled out to pursue. We viewed the dash cam video. It's difficult to see exactly, or to see a clear image of the vehicle crossing the center line, just due to the fact of the distance and grainy video. From the court's perspective, and when the brake lights were put on, it did seem from an earlier portion of the film that the brake light does appear to be close to the center line, but you can't say definitively whether it is or isn't, clearly based on this video. But we do have the testimony of the officer. His observation was that the vehicle, at some point, I don't think there was testimony as to when this occurred, but that the vehicle crossed the fog line and then also crossed the center line, which is clearly marked with both tires over the, which again would be a violation of state statute 346.05 sub 1. And again, in Popke, the court looked at both, or looked at violation or probable cause for a traffic violation, and also reasonable suspicion for OWI under the totality of the circumstances. And I think, this case follows that as well. And again, quoting Popke, even if no probable cause exists, the police officer may still conduct a traffic stop when under the totality of circumstances, he or she has grounds to reasonably suspect that a crime or traffic violation has been committed. The officer must be able to point to specific and articulable facts, which taken together with rational inferences from those facts reasonably warrant the intrusion for the stop, which is quoting State v. Post, 2007, Wisconsin 60. The crucial question is whether the facts of the case would warrant a reasonable police officer, in light of his or her training and experience, to suspect that the individual has committed, was committing, or is about to commit a crime. The officer's, in quote, an unparticularized suspicion or hunch, however, will not give rise to reasonable suspicion. And again, the court looks back at the Post case and concludes that an officer had reasonable suspicion to believe the defendant in that case was operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, but concluded that weaving within a single lane of traffic by itself does not establish reasonable suspicion. As the facts, or as as the clues or facts accumulate, reasonable inferences from the cumulative effect can be drawn. So again, taking a look at, based on the testimony, find that the officer did have probable cause to believe that a traffic code violation occurred. Again, his testimony, and again, it's not pacing, and it wasn't, we heard testimony why he wasn't using the radar device, but he did testify to his observations and training, that he was trained on observing traffic, and didn't mention a training towards pacing, and that he's been trained. He's familiar with the area, and he's familiar with Eastern Avenue and the speed of vehicles. So based on that, I find that he did have probable cause to believe there was a traffic code violation for speeding. Additionally, the officer is there's probable cause to believe that a traffic violation had occurred for crossing over the center line. Again, it's hard to see accurately or definitively on this video, but it's his testimony that he did observe the vehicle cross the fog line, additionally cross the center line. So we have two instances where there were probable cause to believe that there was a traffic code violation that had occurred. And additionally, adding these together, I believe there is reasonable suspicion under the totality of the circumstances to pull the vehicle over for operating while intoxicated. We have the speeding, we have the crossing over the center line, fog lights. The officer testified at 12 o'clock at night. His training as third shift or experience, he does come across intoxicated drivers at this time of night, third shift people. He did pull out behind the vehicle. The vehicle immediately hit its brake lights to slow down. And there was some mention of the testimony of the defendant, just admitting that, not that she was speeding, but that she was going downhill. There wasn't any argument against it. So based on that, I will deny this motion. The motion to suppress for lack of reasonable suspicion for the stop, that the city has met its burden. And that's all for today.
Thank you.
We may resolve. So I just wanted to let the court know where we're at.